Chaplain Nelson here. It's another Hey Chaps, and this time my buddy's not doing so well, and I want to know how to help him. So one of the things I like to do is called QPR, which actually stands for question, persuade, and referral. It's not intended to be a counseling or a treatment form, but it is intended to give hope through positive action. A couple definitions just to get started. Suicide is the intentional act of self-harm with the results in death. Suicide attempt is when someone attempts to harm themselves with the intent but not resulting in death. And intent, which is a conscious desire to end one's person in death. Pretty heavy stuff, but we're going to go through it. So what is my background? Well, my experience with suicide was managing a hotel, had to break the door in to rescue a lady who had slit her wrist, and we were successful in saving her life. I had a child of a friend from young who completed suicide along with her uncle. My brother attempted suicide and we found him gray, but we managed to save him. Another church member, friend of mine, attempted and completed. I participated in funerals of cadets, and I've saved a couple. And I actually saved a man by a chance meeting that came by my house, and we had a talk, and I asked the question, and we went on to talk, and we actually saved his life that day. It's pretty heavy stuff, but if at any time you feel like as we're talking you get a little emotional or something, call a friend. Talk it out. So what about VA? Well, the VA reports that there are 17 veterans commit suicide every day, but that number's a little low. According to other sources, it's probably 40 to 44, and veterans are probably 70% more likely to commit suicide than the regular public. In the US, there's probably a suicide every 17 minutes, 84 a day on the average. It's estimated that there are something like 25 attempts per each person that commits suicide. That's 775,000 attempts every year. It's a growing subject. For everybody that attempts a suicide, there are 6 survivors. That means that there are 1 out of every 62 Americans is a survivor of someone that has attempted or committed suicide. Let's talk about some of the myths. Well, one of the myths is that no one can stop a suicide. It's inevitable. That's not true. If a person in crisis gets the help they need, they will probably never be suicidal again. Another myth is confronting a person about a suicide will cause him to increase the risk of suicide. That's not true. When someone comes along, somebody who's suicidal, just helping with the anxiety might stop the suicide attempt. Another one is only experts can prevent suicide. No, anybody that can offer hope, anybody that can be a friend can end the tragedy of suicide. Another one is suicide people keep their plans to themselves. That's not true either. Probably 90% of everybody who commits suicide or attempt suicide have reached out to somebody weeks before their attempt. Those who talk about suicide actually don't do it. Well, that's not true either. They will or they won't. Depends upon the person and what's going on in their life. Once a person decides to commit suicide, there is nothing anyone can do to help them. That's not true either. Coming alongside a person with kindness, help along the way will actually save that person. So how can you help? It's ask the question. What are some of the risks in the assessment? Well, detection is our #1 job. For an example, let's just look at some things. Problem gambler called. I know it's probably too late for me, but can you recommend a counselor for my wife? Someone that's ODing says, is 24 aspirins and a bottle of vodka lethal? Well, yeah, I think it is. Somebody asked the pharmacist, doctor said if I take all these pills at once, it'll kill me. Probably a good thing because I can't afford another prescription. Another one calls in and my boyfriend said if I leave, he'll kill himself. Well, being dead doesn't sound so bad to me either. An older person might say, I don't have anybody, I can't take my cats with me where I go. Can you recommend a place for an animal shelter? And a teenager might say, everyone would be better off without me. What are some possible suicide indicators? Feeling of hopelessness, rage, uncontrollable anger, seeking revenge, acting reckless or engaging in risky activities, probably riding your motorcycle too fast, feeling trapped like there's no way out, increase in alcohol and drug use, withdrawing from friends and family and society, anxiety, aggression, agitate all the time, not sleeping well, dramatic mood changes, no reason for living, no sense of purpose in life. These are some indicators. What are some situational clues that you might look for in a person? They've seen things that they can't forget. They've got survival guilt. Maybe they've been over in the war and they've killed somebody that a friendly, or they can't get over the sights of war. Loss in a major relationship, death of a spouse or a child, terminal illness, sudden expected of loss of freedom or punishment, loss of financial security, fear of being a burden to others. What are some definite suicidal indicators? Someone threatening to hurt or kill themselves, or talking of wanting to kill themselves, someone looking for ways to kill themselves, someone talking about writing out about death, dying, or suicide, where the instructions are actually how to act it out. How about some expressions that indicate suicide? Well, verbal statements like, I'm going to kill myself, I might as well be dead, just a burden to everyone. Some of the behavior indicators might be giving away prized possessions, making out a will, buying a gun, although those two last things might not be a behavior, but if you add those to other indicators, things to watch out for. So what's the chain of survival? The CPR and KPR are kind of like the same, the four links to saving lives. Early recognition of warning signs, early application of QPR like CPR, early referral for assessment, and early professional treatment. Why do people commit suicide? Well, there are many reasons, but basically it's to stop the pain. Let's talk a little bit about suicidal communication. If QPR depends upon the recognition of suicidal communications, warning signs, risks, factors, quick, bold, positive actions. Just as in a heart attack, tightness of the chest, radial pain, arm pain, are all warning signs of a pending attack. So is clinical depression, a statement of hopelessness, giving away possessions, are all warning signs of a pending suicidal attempt. Several studies show between 80 and 90% of people show warning signs that they are contemplating suicide before the attempt. The U.S. Navy, in a series of 41 suicides, found 90% of the deceased had communicated their intent. If you were suicidal, who would you tell? How would you tell them? How many times would you tell them? What would you do if people did not respond? And how would you change the message if it was ignored? How do we know what we know? Well, assessment is based on how much you learn from the person, the context in which suicide is being considered, recognizing the warning signs, presence of risk factors, presence of protective factors, and what the suicidal person is willing to do to help save his or her life. Relationship is everything. How much we learn depends upon how much they like you and how much we like them. Don't let them tick you off just to prove they can't be helped. Find something they like. You have to remain hopeful about the final income. Trust your fears. Fear is valuable. Felt fear is valuable. Goosebumps and hair standing up straight. It's okay to say you're afraid for somebody. They're scared too. A little bit about depression and suicide. While most people who become depressed will not be suicidal, those who die, probably 2/3, suffer from a depressive illness. Women suffer more than men, almost twice as much. Less than half Americans consider depression a health problem, and 3 out of 5 consider it a personal weakness. Of course, the more signs and clues that are observed, the greater the risk. Take all signs seriously. When the warning signs are present, ask the question. If you can't ask the question, find someone who can. Never be vague about the question you're asking. Tips. Never suggest their method won't work. Never tell them how to do it better. Never promise something you can't deliver. Skip the bumper sticker advice. It's easy to say, but it won't work. Don't start therapy. You're not a counselor. Pay perfect attention. Keep good eye contact, and the magic will happen. A few tips for asking the questions. Don't wait. Ask the question. If the person is resistant, be persistent. Talk to the person alone in a private setting. Allow the person to talk freely. Give yourself plenty of time. And if you have resources at handy, keep your phone numbers, your counselor's numbers, and any other person that might be able to be informed that might help. Remember, how you ask the question is less important than that you ask the question. Some questions, not sure, ask. Have you had thoughts of killing yourself? Are you considering suicide? Are you contemplating ending your life? Have you had any personal thoughts of death? A note here, if the suicidal attempt is in progress, as soon as you establish suicidal ideation, intent, or planning, or suspicion that the person might take their life, or has started an overdose or cutting, ask, have you done anything to harm yourself right now? If the answer is yes, proceed immediately to get help. A good asked question is, have you been unhappy lately? Response, yes. Have you been very unhappy lately? Response, yes. Have you been so unhappy lately that you've considered suicide? Another good question. You know, when people are upset as you seem to be, they often think about suicide. I wonder if you have been thinking about suicide now. Do you wish you could go to sleep and never wake up? Are you planning on killing yourself? Have you been thinking about suicide? Have you had recent thoughts of death or suicide? You sound miserable. You want to die. A couple examples. Okay, John, why don't you tell me a little bit what's going on in your life right now? Audrey, what made you call me right now? This evening, it looks I'd like to hear a little your version of what's going on. Why now questions. Things have been bad for a long time. What's happened recently? What's changed so much that now you're thinking about suicide? Why now? Why are you thinking about killing yourself today? Some other sample questions. With what? Have you thought about how you would kill yourself? Can you tell me the way in which you consider ending your life? How would you kill yourself? How else might you kill yourself? What method of suicide are you thinking about? Pat, you've been struggling with a lot of difficult feelings lately. Tell me more about if you're considering suicide. Have you ever had thoughts of suicide in the past? If yes, when was that? How did you attempt to kill yourself? What method did you try? What helped you get through? Some questions that might help. Who's important to you? Who else knows you're in this much pain? Who is your main support? Who could help you right now? Who needs to know about your troubles? What have you told others about your suicidal thinking? Questions not to ask, or questions, some why not now questions. Give me some reasons why you may want to live. You've given me some reasons why you want to die. Can you tell me why you still want to live? Give me the reasons you want to keep going on. How not to ask the question? You're not thinking about killing yourself, are you? And the answer is usually no. So let's move a little bit away from the questioning onto the persuading. How to persuade a person to stay alive. Listen to their problems. Give them your full attention. Remember, suicide is not the problem, only the solution to a perceived insoluble problem. Do not rush to judgment. Offer hope in any form. Then ask, will you go with me to get help? Will you let me help you get help? Will you promise me not to kill yourself until we find some help? Your willingness to listen and to help can make the difference as long as you're giving hope, and that will make all the difference in the world. In persuading someone to get help, your active listening and questioning may have already won the battle. Finding life-affirming solutions, referral to seek help. If a person hangs up on you, that's a greater risk. If they refuse to get help, that's a greater risk. Unwilling to give up the means, that's a greater risk. Help refused, reasonable risk. The next step is to refer. Referral is an art and a sales job. Something like you're going to feel better, trust me. Have your resources ready. Know the hotline number, know a counselor, know the VA numbers. How-to instructions matter. Can you personalize the endorsement? Do you know a counselor that might help? Consider the cultural, ethnic, professional, and color sensitive. If you've got a clinical buddy, if you don't, find one. A little bit of safety planning. The suicidal risk is determined in a large part by the person's willingness to assume personal responsibility for his or her own safety. Despite a long list of current risk factors, overwhelming loss and clear trigger events, most suicidal people will, if they're not psychotic or mentally ill, will agree to life-saving safety and treatment plan. As you work through the referral and safety plan, keep in mind, the easier the person accepts the deal, that is, no drinking, following medical advice, seeking counseling, the lower the risk. The more the person resists and will not agree, the greater the risk. If you go through kind of a checklist of risks and safety factors based on current research, listen for warnings, but don't hunt them. Make written record of what you hear in your interview, write it down either then or in the future. The more risk factors present, the more risk. Inform our judgments, not determine them. Trust your gut and honor your fear. Risks go from low to moderation when a person agrees to remain clean and sober, seek help and referral, remove a means of suicide, not harm or kill themselves, seeks help in case the situation worsens and involves others, makes a verbal agreement for a safety plan. It gets higher when the person has not been cooperative, not making sense, psychotic, agitated, unable to care for self, cannot regain emotional control, cannot stop crying, is distant, evasive, aloof, paranoid, is in the act of overdosing, has already taken harm, done harm to themselves, standing on the 19th floor out the window, and refuse to accept the responsibility for self or safety, give up to the means of suicide. It's also high when past treatment has failed. There's a risk of personal humiliation, fear of arrest. There's been recent heavy drinking. There's been repeated statements of hopelessness. There is no perceived exit, and they're ticked off. Words matter. A recommitment to life is very different from a promise to a stranger not to kill oneself. It is an acclamation or public attestation that life is worth living in spite of persistent pain and suffering, and no matter how impossible it seems to be better at the moment. Remember that since almost all efforts to persuade someone to live instead of attempt suicide will be met with agreement and relief, don't hesitate to get involved and take the lead. To be effective, say, I want you to live, and I'm on your side. We'll get through this. Get others involved. Ask the person who might help. You got a family, friend, brothers, sisters, pastors, priest, rabbi, bishop, physician. Join with another team of people to help this person. Follow up with a phone call or visit, see how they're doing. Let them know that you care. Caring may save a life. Remember, when you apply QPR, you plant the seeds of hope. Hope helps prevent suicide. Semantics are important. Don't settle for ambiguity. I guess I'll be okay is vague. I'll call somebody if things get bad. Lacks specificity. What is bad? Who is somebody? If you don't understand, say so. Assume nothing. Real people quotes, I promise I will not kill myself, and if I start to feel overwhelmed again, I promise I will call my counselor or the crisis line. If things get bad again, I will call my pastor. Honest, I will. I won't do it. I promise. I won't put Adam through that. I'll call you back if I need to. I won't do it. I just had bad thoughts. I've too much to live for. I can and do agree to a safety plan. I don't want to die. I honor my word. I will not hurt myself. Does not carry the same clarity as I will not kill myself. I promise I won't hurt myself because I'm taking myself clear. It's okay to be fooled by the incompetent liar. So, bad outcome, at least you've covered the bases. Best outcome, a recommitment to life and independent confirmation that the person got into the treatment program. Dealing with resistance. Don't take the bait or step into you make me angry trap. Stay calm. Don't condone suicide as interesting options. Normalize feelings. Avoid platitudes. Say you don't understand when you don't understand. Final note, just as surgeons do not save everyone they operate on, neither can we, working with a suicidal person, expect to save everyone. Our only tools include the quality of our equipment, our response, and our outreach options. Our words, our compassion, and our ability to listen carefully and try to understand a psychological pain so intense that death seems the only answer. Of these, our compassion and listening skills will carry the day. Little word on dealing with a violent death. Generally takes 18 to 24 months to stabilize after the death of a family member. It can take much longer if the death was violent. Your worst time is not at the moment of a tragic event takes place because you're in a state of numbness. Often you slide into this pit 4 to 7 months after the event. When people ask how you're doing, don't always say fine. Let someone know how terrible you feel. Fine to me just stands for frustrated, insecure, and neurotical, unstable. Talking with a friend who has been through a similar survival can be very helpful. Where do you go for help? In the event you were a survivor, where do you go for help? Who will you call? Colleague, your pastor, spiritual advisor, someone to talk to. The most important thing is that you talk to somebody. So, conclusion, hope is the key. Treatment, care, and concern saves lives. I offer this prayer as we close. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you, lift up His countenance upon you, and give you peace. Amen.